Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're going to, challenge one of the most deeply ingrained beliefs in our culture.
Huh?
This idea that innate talent, genius, is the #1 key to extraordinary success.
Right. It's a fundamentally counterintuitive premise, really. I mean, we've compiled sources that basically ask, what if the difference between potential and, say, world-class achievement is just persistent?
Yeah.
What if how smart you are matters less than how hard and for how long you're willing to work?
The author of a lot of the source material has this great personal story that really sets the tone for this whole deep dive.
Oh, right.
She grew up with a father who would frequently tell her, you're no genius. But then, years later, she wins a MacArthur Fellowship.
Which everyone calls the Genius Grant.
The Genius Grant, for discovering the exact mechanism behind passion and perseverance.
The irony is just, it's perfect.
Yeah.
So our mission today, really, is to use the science, the case studies in these sources to unpack that mechanism.
This idea they call grit.
Exactly. We want to define how this combination of passion and perseverance actually drives success, why it separates the merely talented from the truly accomplished.
And we don't have to wait long for the evidence. It jumps right away to the U.S. Military Academy at West Point.
Mm-hmm.
So when new cadets arrive, they face something called Beast Barracks.
Beast, yeah. It's this incredibly arduous, high-pressure, 7-week summer training program. It's designed to test them to their absolute breaking point.
And West Point, of course, attracts the highest achievers in the country. They use what's called the Whole Candidate Score, or WCS, to evaluate everyone.
Right, and that WCS is their best statistical shot at measuring talent. It pulls in SAT scores, high school rank, physical fitness, leadership stuff. It should be the ultimate predictor of success, right?
That's what you'd think. But here's the fascinating part. When they measured it against who actually quit during those 7 weeks,
Attrition.
the WCS was completely unreliable. Cadets with the highest scores were just as likely to drop out as cadets with the lowest.
So talent was what, a non-factor?
A total non-factor in just surviving that first hurdle.
But then you look at the scores from the grit scale, which measures long-term passion and perseverance, and it was, the source says, astoundingly reliable predictor.
How reliable?
In the first year of the study, it accurately predicted the dropout of 71 cadets and then 62 the next year. And all the while, the cadets who stayed and the ones who left had, statistically identical whole candidate scores.
So we start with this undeniable proof that talent is no guarantee of grit. But the sources push it even further. They suggest that sometimes being highly talented can actually be a liability.
It's the talent trap, yeah. When the research looked at, say, Ivy League undergraduates, the data showed that high SAT scores were sometimes even inversely correlated with grit scores.
Wait, really? So the smarter you were on paper, the less gritty you might be?
Sort of. The working theory is that if everything has always come easily to you, you never develop the habit of grinding through real difficulty, which is, essential when the work finally does get challenging.
Yeah.
Your potential is one thing. What you do with it over years is something else entirely.
Okay, so let's unpack why we as a society are still so, distracted by talent, even when the data shows its limits.
Well, the sources point to this deep-seated hidden prejudice called the naturalness bias.
The naturalness bias.
Yeah, this is from psychologist Chia-Yong Se's work, and it's this stunning disconnect between what people say and what they actually believe.
What do you mean?
Well, in surveys, people universally say effort and practice are the keys to success. But when they were shown 2 profiles of people with identical achievements, like a virtuoso musical performance,
Okay.
they judged the person labeled the natural, the one with innate talent,
Yeah.
as more likely to succeed and more hireable than the person labeled the striver.
Wait, so even with the exact same results, we trust the natural more? That feels almost irrational.
It does. The sources suggest we're just captivated by this idea of effortless excellence, the myth of the prodigy. We assume the natural didn't have to work as hard, so they must have this, greater reserve of untapped potential.
And the striver, we assume, has already hit their ceiling.
Exactly. We think they've already maxed out.
That bias has huge consequences, especially in the corporate world. I mean, you think about firms like McKinsey, which historically put a massive emphasis on being bright.
Right, the whole war for talent philosophy,
Mm-hmm.
heavily screening for high test scores.
But that philosophy got a lot of pushback. Sometimes people called it the war on common sense.
Yeah, critics point out that aggressively promoting just the most visibly talented people, the A players, without factoring in things like consistency or character. It led to really poor performance in some companies.
Enron is the famous example.
Enron, exactly. Just being bright doesn't get you results if that brightness isn't applied, consistently.
And focusing so much on innate ability, it can actually harm the individuals too.
Yeah.
You're constantly sending this message that effort doesn't matter as much. You're creating a kind of self-imposed low ceiling.
Absolutely. The story of Scott Barry Kaufman is a perfect example. He was labeled learning disabled as a child. He went on to get advanced degrees from Carnegie Mellon, Cambridge, Yale.
Wow.
But he kept getting rejected from certain programs because of those old low test scores. They had cemented this fixed idea of his potential. He internalized it for years, this idea that his lack of talent would limit his life.
Until someone finally encouraged him to question it.
Right, to question that entire premise of fixed ability.
So if talent is misleading, how does achievement actually work? What's the math?
The sources give us this central two-part formula. And the key takeaway is that effort, this is the critical insight effort, factors into the equation twice.
Okay, let's break that down.
The first equation is talent times effort equals skill.
Okay, so effort builds the skill.
Right, this is the acquisition phase. It's turning raw aptitude into actual capability.
And the second equation?
The second is skill times effort equals achievement. This is the productivity phase. It's not enough to have a skill. You have to persistently apply it. Effort is the multiplier at every single step.
That's a huge idea, because I think most people assume it's talent leads to skill, which leads to achievement. We forget that second times effort.
We do. We forget that the most skilled person in the world achieves absolutely nothing if they don't apply that ceaseless effort to use the skill.
There's a great story about Warren McKenzie, the master potter.
Oh yeah, the 92-year-old potter. His philosophy is this formula in a nutshell. He famously said, the first 10,000 pots are difficult, and then it gets a little bit easier.
10,000 pots. That makes my 2-week Duolingo streak feel pretty minimal.
Right. But that same ceaseless effort, day after day, that's what allows him to continually produce beautiful pots. That's the achievement. The effort never, ever stops.
Or look at John Irving, the novelist. He was not a natural storyteller in school. He got a C- in high school English, had a low SAT verbal score of 475 because of severe dyslexia.
And yet, he became this celebrated author. His achievement came entirely from stamina, from his commitment to the grind. He says rewriting is his real talent. He'll spend more time revising a novel like 8 or 9 times than writing the first draft.
That's pure perseverance.
It is. It's compensating for what wasn't, an innate, effortless skill.
This sounds a lot like Will Smith's core philosophy.
I will not be outworked, period. That's his whole mantra. He sees skill as something developed only by hours and hours of beating on your craft.
It's all about consistency. The sources bring up this Harvard treadmill test from the 1940s.
Oh, that thing was brutal. Young men running on a steep, fast treadmill until they collapsed.
And remarkably, how long they stayed on that treadmill predicted their psychological adjustment in adulthood way more than their baseline physical fitness.
So it wasn't about being fit, it was about pushing through.
Yeah, it's not just surviving one hard day. It's the willingness to get back on the treadmill the next day and the next and try again.
Because if you quit, the output of that second equation, skill times effort, it just plummets to zero. Your skills stop improving and your achievement flatlines. Consistency is everything.
So let's break down the mechanics of grit itself. You said it has 2 main parts.
Right. Perseverance, which is the effort side, and passion, which is that consistency of interest over time. And the sources suggest it develops across 4 key components, usually in a predictable order.
Okay, component 1 is interest, the spark. But you're saying we have to get rid of this idea that passion is like a lightning strike.
Exactly. It's not a sudden discovery, it's a process. It's discovery, then development, then deepening. You actively construct it over time, starting with just a simple interest.
Like Jeffrey Gettleman, the Pulitzer winner for his work in East Africa.
Perfect example. His initial passion wasn't journalism, it was East Africa. Journalism was just the vehicle, it was the means to an end.
So he used writing to get to his real passion.
He set a very clear, deliberate path. He started at the student newspaper and worked his way up for a decade, until he got to Step G East Africa Bureau Chief. That long-term commitment turned an interest into a lifelong passion.
So after interest comes purpose.
Yes. Purpose. This is the other-centered intention. The belief that your work contributes to the well-being of others. It adds that, that moral dimension.
This is like that parable of the three bricklayers.
Exactly. One sees a job, I'm laying bricks. The second sees a career. But the third sees a calling, I'm building the house of God. How you see your work changes everything.
And you can see that evolution. I love the story of Joe Leader, the NYC subway engineer.
Right. He started the job just to pay off student loans. It was just a job.
But then what happened?
Over time, he'd see a bolt he installed and realize his work would last for 30 years, moving 1.7 billion people a year. He went from seeing it as a job to seeing it as a calling.
That purpose is a huge motivator. But the research from Adam Grant says you need both, right?
Yes, that's the key. For maximum effort, you need both the pro-social motive, the purpose, and intrinsic interest. You have to enjoy the work itself. That synergy is where maximum grit comes from.
Okay, so the third component is practice, specifically deliberate practice.
And it's not just putting in the hours. Experts don't just practice more, they practice differently. Deliberate practice is effortful by definition because it pushes you right outside your comfort zone.
So what are the components of it?
There are 4 non-negotiables. 1, a clearly defined stretch goal. 2, full concentration and effort. 3, immediate and informative feedback. And 4, repetition with reflection and refinement.
So this is the complete opposite of that effortless state of flow people talk about.
It is, yes. Flow is when challenge perfectly matches skill, so it feels effortless. Deliberate practice is hard, often frustrating because the challenge exceeds your current skill.
But what's really interesting is that the grittier spellers in the National Spelling Bee study,
They found deliberate practice to be more effortful, but also, surprisingly, more enjoyable than their less greedy peers. They sort of learned to love the burn of getting better.
which brings us to the fourth component, the foundation for all of it, hope.
And this isn't passive hope. Gritty hope is active. It's the expectation that our own efforts can change our future. It's the resolve, I will make tomorrow better, not I hope tomorrow is better.
This connects directly to Marty Seligman's work on learned helplessness.
Totally. If you suffer setbacks you think you can't control, you just give up. But optimists, the gritty ones, they have a different way of explaining things. They look for temporary and specific causes for problems. I mismanaged my time this week, not permanent ones like I screw up everything.
And that framing makes you believe a solution is possible.
And that's tied directly to Carol Dweck's growth mindset. If you believe intelligence can improve with effort, you're going to be significantly grittier. Failure is just a moment, not a life sentence.
So knowing all this, how do we grow grit? We have to look at the external factors.
Growing grit from the outside in.
Mm.
Yeah. The sources say grit is often fostered by what's called wise parenting, which is both highly supportive and highly demanding.
They're not a trade-off, they reinforce each other.
Think about the NFL quarterback Steve Young. He wanted to quit football, and his dad, whose nickname was literally Grit, told him he couldn't come home because quitters don't live in their house.
That sounds incredibly harsh on the surface.
It does, but Young saw it as a loving act, because his father enforced that commitment rule while also deeply understanding and supporting him, even his extreme anxiety. The strictness was rooted in support, not just control.
That environment of high expectations and high support is huge because of something called the corresponsive principle.
Which basically says that the traits that lead us to certain situations are then reinforced and amplified by those same situations.
So you choose a hard environment, and that hard environment makes you a harder person.
It's a powerful feedback loop. You see it in the research by Margot Gardner and Dan Willingham. They tracked 11,000 teenagers and found that sticking with a high school extracurricular for multiple years.
Any extracurricular.
Any of them. Track, newspaper, didn't matter. That follow-through was the single best predictor of getting academic honors in college and holding leadership positions in adulthood. Better than grades, better than SAT scores.
Wow. So it wasn't the activity, it was the discipline of sticking with a hard thing.
That consistency teaches these powerful, transferable lessons about perseverance.
And you can build a whole culture around this, like Pete Carroll with the Seattle Seahawks. His entire team culture is built around one word: compete.
But he's very explicit about how he defines compete. It's not about beating others, it's about striving together. It's an internal focus on excellence. And his coaching staff just relentlessly reinforces that with simple, clear language. It becomes a shared identity.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? The synthesis seems pretty clear. Achievement is not a sprint. It's not about talent just appearing out of nowhere. It's the result of ceaseless, consistent effort over time.
It requires passion, which is fueled by interest and purpose. And it requires perseverance, which is supported by practice and hope.
And high achievers, they see failure as just part of the process. I mean, MacArthur winner Ta-Nehisi Coates said, "Failure is probably the most important factor in all of my work. Writing is failure, over and over and over again."
Now, that's the gritty reality of it.
So if we define genius as accomplishing great things without effort, then no, most of us are not geniuses. But if we redefine it, if genius is working toward excellence, ceaselessly, with every element of your being, then in fact, so are you.
Which brings us to our final provocative thought. Consider the ancient Finnish concept of sisu. It's pronounced sisu.
Sisu.
Unlike grit, which is both passion and perseverance, sisu is pure perseverance. It's this deep inner reserve of strength, this psychological capital that allows you to keep fighting long after most people would have quit.
It's the belief that grit isn't just something you do, it's something you are.
Right. So think about that. Think about how adopting that identity, the belief that you possess this deep internal strength that you can access no matter how daunting the odds, could fundamentally change your own daily behavior and unlock a new level of resilience in your own long-term goals.
The transformative power of sisu.
Something to reflect on until our next deep dive.